before I started Select Aquatics, I used to order stuff online like everybody else does. And I was always amazed at people who would raise fish up, really have nice fish they want to sell. They tell you about, you're looking forward to getting them. And then they take, like, say, 10 fish, slap them into a bag, put them in a cardboard box, and then ship them priority mail so they arrive to you sometime before a week is up. That never quite made sense to me, and I realized when I looked into doing this business that there had to be some ways to do things differently, because that's kind of the situation many people are finding themselves in. So when I first started, I used to drive to dentist offices and oral surgeons' offices begging for styrofoam boxes. Everybody knew me as that crazy fish guy that's looking for the boxes. And of course that became pretty unrealistic after a short period of time. And eventually I got myself in to become a styrofoam recycler at one of the local colleges. So now I go in and I pay for a license, and I'm able to go in then and pick up the boxes I need for Select Aquatics. But it also occurred to me that if I was going to do this, my shipping chops had to be just as good as my fish raising chops if I was going to do this right. There's no point in my spending all kinds of time. Some of these lines now I've had 6-7 years that I've been carefully selectively breeding. I don't want to take those fish and put them in a box and have them get to you and they're not in their best shape. So I've worked it out so that hopefully the fish arrive to you as unstressed and as healthy as possible. And I'll explain here in the video exactly what a box looks like that you're going to receive from Select Aquatics. And I stay in close touch the whole process, and I'm always looking for feedback and suggestions and comments on my shipping. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the video. Now, every once in a while, someone will write to me and they'll say, don't you ship second day? And I don't, for a couple of reasons. The first is that I only ship post office, USPS, and they don't offer a second day service. Now, before those of you are going, he's full of crap and I'm going to get out of here, whatever, they do have a second day priority express. And what that is it's not something you can choose. For example, if I have a box I want to ship from here to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, I can usually get it there by noon tomorrow morning. It's not a problem. Fort Lauderdale is pretty clear, right near an airport. Everything's hunky-dory. However, if I want to ship a box to you anywhere pretty much in Kansas, New Mexico, a lot of areas in Mexico, or for that matter, even in Alamosa, Colorado, which is about a 2.5-hour drive from here, those are going to be 2-day deliveries. And the reason is because they have to take them by truck. They can't fly them there. So those are going to be second-day Priority Express deliveries, but they're the same price as overnight. So you don't save any money at all. And usually when I set up an overnight delivery for you, I won't know until I get to the post office whether you will in fact get it the very next day or whether it will be a 2-day delivery. 2-day deliveries happen 10 to 15% of the time. And they change throughout the year. They change seasonally. They change based on weather. For instance, if there's big storms going through an area, then when I go to take a box in, say to be delivered to that area, I might find out that it's going to be a 2-day delivery. So that's the only kind of 2-day deliveries that I deal with at all. And I always sent extras from the very start of when I started doing this to cover for losses. Part of it was because I used to ship a lot of priority, and priority losses are a little higher. So that went fine and dandy for many years. But I no longer ship priority. And the reason I don't anymore is because, well, when I started this business, I had friends sit me down and they said, you don't want to do this. I said, what are you talking about? You really don't want to ship fish to people. I said, why? Fish people are tough. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, fish people can be really mean. They're going to try to take advantage of you, yada, yada, yada. I must say that I spend every morning answering emails. I have had that's the best part of my day. I enjoy very much writing all of you back. I have never had a problem with anybody, never had a need or a reason for anybody to get angry at me or for me to get angry at anybody else. And I have easily written thousands of people over the last 8 years. That said, there was one exception. And everybody told me to keep an eye out for this one person. And so, I happened to get him. And he happened to have found out about a change to PayPal policy before I did. And he managed to scam about $100 out of me. So I'm actually grateful to him because he informed me about something I didn't know, and I could have lost a lot more money. And that story is here. Okay, so I'm here sitting at my computer, minding my own business, doing what I do every morning, writing everybody emails, and I get an order from somebody. I don't know what name I should use. Um, we'll call him Chuck. So Chuck sends me an order, and he wants to buy a bunch of plecos. Fine, no problem. And I believe he wanted to order at that time 4 or 5 plecos. It's fine, okay. And which came to about, I don't know, maybe $100. It was close to $100 in orders when he bought them. And so I said, fine. I sent him back the quote and everything, and he wrote me back and said, no, I want to go priority. I really don't want to go overnight. I don't want to spend the money. And I'm thinking, you just spent $100 on fish. Why do you want to save $20 on shipping? So, but anyway, I said, okay, fine. And I explained to him, I said, well, if something happens to these fish, I can't guarantee them. I'll ship them to you priority if you insist. So he wrote me back, I'm an angelfish breeder. I've shipped angelfish all my life. I know what I'm doing. I know how the post office works. I want to ship them priority. I said, okay. Now, I should have sensed that something was up, but I didn't at the time. I figured, well, priorities get there just fine, about 60-70% of the time. So I went ahead, boxed them all up. Oh, and when you do set up an order with me, as anybody who's ordered from me knows, when you give me your zip code and how many fish you get, I send you back a quote. And in that quote, I will say a few things like, the fish are fasted for 24 hours before they're shipped. You'll have to sign for the package when it arrives. Just some basic stuff. On the priority blurb, right at the top of it, I said, like most people doing this business, I cannot guarantee any live arrival with priority mail because priority often takes longer than 2 or 3 or 4 days to get to you. That's just the way it is. And everybody I've talked to that has shipped priority and has done this has said that's their policy. It's always been their policy, and they've never had a problem with it. So I've always sent extras, as I said, and so I never had a problem with it. So anyway, put the plecos in a box, and he also ordered some hard goods too. He ordered about, I don't know, 50 or 60 bucks worth of hard goods. So I put them in the box, shipped them off to him. So I think I shipped the box like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. No, it couldn't have been that. It must have been on a Monday that I shipped the box to him because I wouldn't ship priority that late in the week. So I would have shipped it on a Monday. And lo and behold, the post office, the box got waylaid, went off somewhere where it shouldn't. And he finally got the box the following Tuesday or Wednesday. So they arrived to him about a week later, week and a half later. So he writes me back and says all the fish died. And I'd like to reorder them, again. I said, well, I'm really sorry that the box got lost, that it took 6 days or 7 days, whatever it was, to get to you. Here's what it will cost to ship them back out to you again. It's no problem. I'm, pleased to do business. Sorry this happened. This time around, I would recommend that you go with overnight. So then he writes me back and he said, no. You're going to pay for the fish and you're going to pay for shipping because it's your fault that the fish died. And I'm like, no, it's not my fault the fish died. Priority often comes in late. And he said, no, it's your fault. I know how the post office works. I'm like, huh? And then he writes me and says, and your shipping was awful. Your packaging was terrible. Your packaging was wrong. And then I knew something was up because my packaging, I really try to make sure my packaging is top notch. So I never asked for pictures of the dead fish. It never occurred to me because I've never had that happen with a priority shipment before. Usually, people understand, and it's very clear that I can't do anything if a fish arrives to you DOA, ship priority. So anyway, so I said no. I wrote him back. I said, I sent him a copy of the quote. Here's the quote you agreed to, and it explains that I'm not responsible for the fish. So I apologize in a sense. It's not my fault that the fish didn't get to you in time, but you chose the priority mail when I was very strong in advice that this wasn't a good idea. So I didn't hear from him again. Well, he went ahead and called PayPal and contested my shipment and wanted me to refund back to him the cost of the hard goods, the shipping, and the fish. So claiming, and he got the hard goods just fine, and the box got to them as soon as a priority box would get to him, which happened to be at that time 7 days. So PayPal writes me, and I said, no problem. Here's a copy of the quote. Here's a copy of our email stream. This has been my policy at that point for, this happened last spring. So for, 7 years, this has been the way I've done it. It's never been a problem. So anyway, I spent a month with PayPal. And they decided at the end of the month that they were going to change their policy, or that they had changed their policy, and now I was just finding out about it. I was never quite clear. But if I choose to use priority as a method of delivery for live fish, then I'm responsible for the fish. Nothing I say in my quote, nothing I can do legally can cover me. That's just the way it is. So they automatically deducted. Well, then I had a choice. I could send him, replace his fish and pay shipping, or refund his money for the fish. He was angry because he wanted me to refund the money for the whole order, so I knew it was him trying to scam me. I'm sure the fish are fine today, but anyway, that's beside the point. And so that's why I stopped shipping priority. When you email me and say you're looking for a couple of fish, I'll come down here and check to make sure I've got your order, and then I'll email you back, and with your zip code and how many you like, then I'll send you back a quote. With that quote will be a day that the fish will be shipped to you, and then I have a board upstairs, and you get written up on the board. And then the day before your fish are to be shipped, I come down here and put these red plastic things on the tanks that reminds me not to feed the tank for the day previous to when your order goes out. Then I come down here, grab the fish, and then ship them out to you the next day. From downstairs, they're brought up here. Yes, this is my kitchen. And the bags are all laid out on newspaper so that I can spot any leaks in the bags or any problems. And they'll sit here for a little bit, and then I'll go back and make up labels for all of them. And then they'll look like this. Okay, the bags are all now labeled and trimmed, and so far there's been no leaks. Everything's been fine. This is how I do all the bags, by the way. If you have more than one species in a box, I'll go ahead and I'll label them so that there's no possibility of ever mistaking them. And then from here, we will go ahead and start putting them together in the box. And I try to do it so that you have a different label for each species, and the reason is because the fish get all mixed up. I mix the bags up and I put them in the box. The bigger bags go toward the bottom. The cooler fish go toward the bottom. Furthest from the hot pack. I take temperature considerations into mind when I put the box together so that you don't end up getting cooked fish. And over the last 7 years, particularly the last 3 or 4, my losses have been pretty close to zero. In the orders that I send out to people, I always ask people to write me back and let me know how the fish arrived. And I often say in there that I'm always working on adjusting the shipping process. And one of the kinds of things that came out of that is that I only use this type of paper towel. This is the soft and cottony type. It's only made by Viva, and it has a very, very soft. It's not going to crinkle, it's not going to corner, it's not going to abrase into a breather bag. Some of the rougher paper towels, for instance, this is a type of paper towel you don't want to use. This is it's very rigid. It will tend to, when it's wrapped around the bags, it will develop corners and creases, and over time of bumping around, those creases end up abrasing their way and causing leaks in the breather bags. Whereas this stuff is very smooth, it's cottony, it doesn't wrinkle, it doesn't abrase. And so that's one of the kinds of things that I use exclusively. And also the styrofoam peanuts that I use. I've used a number of different types of peanuts, and these are what I found over time. I once, not knowing about water-soluble peanuts, actually sent a box to someone with water-soluble peanuts. And it was about 30 odessa-barbs, and all it took was 4 or 5 bags to break, which happened. And I don't have them break anymore. I use a different type of breather bag now, but about 4 bags broke. And the woman said when she opened the box, it was like opening up a box full of cream of mushroom soup. Surprisingly, all the fish survived. But now I make sure not to use any water-soluble peanuts. This is going to be a fairly good-sized order, so I start off with a large box. And the first thing I'm going to do is you put a layer of styrofoam peanuts across the bottom. This allows air circulation underneath the fish throughout the box, particularly if there's a heat pack in the box. And when there's not a heat pack, it also provides a little bit of extra cushioning. So if the box is dropped, then the fish don't get slammed, and that's when you get breather bags that break or that sort of thing. So we'll put a layer of peanuts in here, and then you always want to carefully structure the inside of the box. And I use a certain type of paper towels. I use the Viva cotton paper towels, and I'll put them over the peanuts when we get it in the bottom, and then we'll go ahead and start wrapping the breather bags up individually into each of their own paper towels. Now, people also ask me where I get these really nice, incredibly sturdy styrofoam boxes. I ship all of my fish in biological quality styrofoam boxes. And I purchased them from a local university who collects them as they use them. And then they have to recycle them, so they give them to me at a reduced cost. I go over there one day a week and I pick up whatever I need. And then I have a license with them, and I've been doing that now for about 7 years. I pay so much to maintain my license, and that's how I get all these boxes. So if you want to do this and get a hold of some of these boxes, go to a local university or to a chemical company. They run through these boxes all the time, and they generally have to pay to recycle them. So they're more than happy to work out an agreement where you can get them from them. So the bags are all wrapped into their own little paper towels. See if I can get better under the light here. And then they're carefully placed in the box, really tight. The cooler water fish and the biggest bags are on the bottom. And then after this layer, there will be peanuts put over the top of that, then another paper towel, and another layer. Every box gets an invoice sent with it, with an itemization of everything in the contents in the box. And then with your first order, you get an introductory letter, which you see there on the right, where I just say hi and keep in touch, and please don't feel that you can't contact me, or if you have any questions or concerns, or you want to follow up on your order, or any concerns you might have, or any thoughts you might have. Okay, this is layer number 2 laid in. Everything's nice and tight and with still some space so that everything can breathe. And we go on to layer 3, lay another layer of styrofoam peanuts down and another paper towel, and we go to layer 3. Okay, the third layer is put in. This box actually couldn't take another fish. This is about as tight as you want it to be. So with this now, I'll cover the top, what's left, with styrofoam peanuts, and put another, actually I won't put another layer of paper towels on, but I will put the introductory letter and the PO on top of that, and then close the box up and seal it up. So the box is ready to go, and even with the fact that there's no losses, I always include extras with every species, so there's always extras throughout this box. This particular box, you saw what was in it. It's going to California. If it were further away, it would cost a little more, but this box to ship is going to run me probably between $90 to $95. So that gives you an idea of what the cost is. But there's a lot of fish in this box. There's about 40, there's like 44 fish in this box. So we'll seal it up. Here's the box, all taped up, about ready to go. It's going to be hold for pickup. The address isn't yet put on the side of who this is going to, but normally there'd be a big address. Your address will go right there. And we'll run this on over to the post office. Fish were fasted for 24 hours before they were packaged, so there's shouldn't be any issues with water quality in the bags. And I always pack the fish up assuming that they could take up to 2 to 3 days to arrive where they're going, because you never know if there's going to be delays or not. So you always add a little bit extra water. You never try to do things right to the minimums, because that's when your box gets lost, or when it gets drop kicked, or when whatever happens to it. But hopefully this will arrive nice and safe and sound. And once this box is finished up and off, then I'll come back and get ready for some of the orders going out tomorrow. So here we are, sitting out in front of the Erie Post Office in Erie, Colorado. Got my box right here next to me to take in. I want to say before we go in here that I have been kicked out of many post offices in my life. I have been taken into back rooms on at least 3 occasions. I've been physically removed from post offices at least twice by employees, all for coming into a post office with the daring to carry a box with fish in it that has water in it. And in fact, about 20 years ago, I vowed I would never again set foot in a post office. The problem is that when I started this business, I lived like 2 minutes away, and the post office is the cheapest way to ship. So I was trying to figure out, well, what do I do? So what I did was I called them, told them I was a local businessman setting up a business here in Erie, and I wanted to use them exclusively for my shipping. Could I set up a meeting with them? So they said yeah. So I put a suit and tie on and went in and sat down with a woman at that time who was Jean, who's no longer there. Explained what I was doing. She kind of cocked her head to the side a little bit and was like, okay, I think that's legal. Anyway, that was now 8 years ago. I've shipped over 1,100 boxes through this post office. And I know everybody here now. There's only about 6 employees. And they have a number of times gotten involved for me and saved packages that had been lost or found problems that I was having. And they've turned out to be absolutely great. So I'm well aware that most people across the country are not so fortunate to have such a great post office. And this is the post office I use and where all your boxes come out of. The next question is from Patrick, and he had just received a box of fish from me. And when you receive some fish from me, I send you the tracking number when I get home from the post office. And in that little email that I send you is a bit of information about how I recommend that you slowly acclimate the fish to your water. So anyway, he writes back to me, hi Greg, I read your directions and I will do just that. Thank you for all your help. And I have just one question, and please don't take it the wrong way. Do you recommend that I quarantine your fish? I see all the YouTube saying you should always quarantine. Thank you, Greg. Well, first off, I'm certainly not offended. But we all hear about how we have to quarantine fish when we get them from the pet shop and keep them in a separate tank, usually for at least a week, to make sure that if they're carrying anything, that they express it and you can deal with it before you introduce it to the fish in your aquarium. If you're taking good care of your fish in your aquarium, that's really good advice, actually, because the only way you're generally going to get illnesses, if your husbandry is up, is by introducing a disease to your tank from a new fish. So that's actually very good advice. But in the years I've been doing this, I've come to learn that the quarantining is as much a protection of my fish coming to you as your fish. For instance, if you get a fish from me, that poor fish has got to adapt to your water, it's got to adapt to your husbandry, it's got to adapt to your food schedule. What better way to do that than to have a place of his own for a week or two to get acclimated to your water and get acclimated to your circumstances before then being thrown into a tank full of strange fish that all may be carrying a number of pathogens that don't bother those fish that they've become accustomed to facing. The fish that I send you is going to have to deal with at a time when he's at his weakest, trying to adjust to the new water conditions. So you're quarantining my fish that I send to you is as much for their protection as it is for the protection of your fish in your tank. So quarantining is always a great idea, at least a week. And no, it's great advice. Not offended in the least. You definitely want to quarantine. Thanks. Okay, Jimmy asks, I understand the need to remove mulm and detritus from a tank, but I'm curious about your box filters. Your page mentions tossing the filter floss, not the marbles, monthly. Do the marbles keep enough beneficial bacteria to keep that cycle going while the new floss grows more bacteria? If I read you correctly, I should get 2 box filters for a 40 breeder, correct? I was looking at getting 2 of these corner filters. And they list the URL address for Gemco is where now the filters can be bought pretty easily. They make them routinely there. The box filters are a filter that comes out of the 60s. There's no question. It's an old style filter. No moving parts. Why don't you grab one? Some of the box filters that I have downstairs have literally been with me since I was in high school. I used to sell them here. I don't sell them anymore. And the reason I don't sell them anymore is because you put these in a priority box, and more often than not, they end up getting smashed. So I stopped shipping them. But I think Gemco runs, I don't know, $8, $9 a piece for these things. But they last forever. No moving parts, nothing to wear out, and they're great. They're probably the most efficient filter you can have. And most importantly, they remove the mulm from the aquarium. You're not depending on some magical bacterial activity to clean up excess food and waste and such. This way you're removing the mulm from the filters. Now, when I put these things together, I'll Should have put it back in the bag. When I put these things together, I put marbles on the bottom, in this bottom plate. Oh, I don't know, maybe two layers deep. And then I put floss on top of that. And then of course, put this together. And then Gemco sells a lift tube. It's a half-inch lift tube. You buy it usually in 3-foot sections or 6-foot sections. It's very inexpensive, just a few cents per foot. And I cut it up into 4-inch sections, and I put a lift tube on top of the box filter. Putting that lift tube on increases the pull of the box filter a lot, by about 30 to 50%. So, and it also holds the lid onto the box filter, and they work really great. So, the marbles are not meant to provide any beneficial bacteria activity, and in fact neither is the floss. In the way that I use them, where you change them monthly, it's almost strictly a mechanical filtration situation. Granted, there's going to be some biological filtration as the filter floss does develop colonies and it helps and all of that sort of thing. And if you leave the filter in too long and let the floss get too dirty, then the bacteria that's created in the filter will end up causing problems in your tanks. That's one of the reasons I use them, because you can see how the floss is, you can see exactly where the tank is, you can get them out and get it clean. You can have the box filters kind of just hidden back and not very obvious. Always working, checking on them occasionally. This is a tank of my eye growing out. Or you can have them sitting right out in the open where you can see them really easily. Here in these Pleco breeding tanks, where the water quality is everything, having the filter so obvious as to exactly how dirty it is and what's going on is really important. So they're great because I can pull them right out pretty easily. I keep a few extras on hand that always have fresh floss in them, and I just swap them out when they get dirty. For example, in these Pleco grow-out tanks, you can see how the floss is getting dirty. These filters are only about a week old, but that's because there's just so much emulsion and detritus that gets blown up in this tank, because this is a grow-out tank for the young Plecos. But when they start getting really dirty, these aren't quite ready to change yet. We just swap them out. I'll show you a couple that are. Now here's an example of 2 box filters that I'll probably clean after I finish doing this video. The thing I don't like about it is you can see how the dirt has already crept down through the floss to where it's near toward the bottom. But also the top is so heavily covered that the flow through of the filter is compromised. And so at this point I'm going to go ahead and pull these out, because if I don't pull them out now, they're only going to be worse tomorrow, and they're pretty bad as they are. So that's about as bad as I ever let them get. And then in my room, because I have about 200 of these box filters here, I have this cart that I'm able to roll around. It's got an extra blower on the bottom there, a thing on the middle shelf full of extra marbles for the filters. And then I have a bunch of extra filters here. I'll go ahead and I clean a few every day just to try and keep ahead of them. And then I'm able to use these in rotation and clean the box filters pretty easily and pretty quickly. Anyway, I hope that answers the question. And as I mentioned, Gemco online, www.gemco.com. They're the only place I know of that makes them and sells them. And they, thank goodness for them. It's one cheap filter that you can put in. They're efficient, and they, I think that for live bears and the fish that I'm dealing with, they're probably the best filter you can use. So anyway, thanks. Thank you for watching this video on shipping, and the next one's going to be on the species Amica splendens, one of the original goodeids in the hobby, and one of the prettiest goodeids and one of the easiest to keep, and also very prolific. So I hope to see you then, plus questions, of course, from customers. Thank you.